In Hades, no two runs are the same. If you've played this game for more than a few hours, you're no stranger to that fact. In one run, you might end up with a bow that can shoot 12 homing arrows at once. Each and every one of these arrows would have a 20% chance to land a critical hit, which would triple their normal damage. In the run afterwards, you could get upgrades that make your attacks inflict the weak status effect on enemies, cutting down the damage they can do by 30%. Not only that, but each time you hit an enemy with this, you have a 15% chance to brainwash them for a few seconds, making them fight for you. To top it off, you're immune to being staggered when attacking. I could list off plenty more examples to get my point across, but I imagine that you get the idea already. No two runs in Hades are the exact same. There are a good amount of reasons as to why that is exactly. However, there are two specific reasons that stand tall above the rest: God Boons and Daedalus Hammers. In this episode of Hades by Design, we're going to cover these two upgrade types. More specifically, we're going to answer one important question: how do Boons and Hammers keep you playing Hades for so long? To answer that, we first need to specify what Boons and Hammers exactly are. Both of these are actually pretty similar in function, so we can group them together as one entity: run-exclusive upgrades. As the name implies, these are temporary upgrades that appear during your runs and expire once your run ends. How do Boons and Hammers exactly differ from one another though? Well, a Boon is an upgrade that enhances, while a Hammer is an upgrade that changes. Boons enhance some facet of Zagreus, usually by buffing his stats or granting some kind of special effect to one of his moves. Meanwhile, Hammers change Zagreus' weapons, making them function differently. This distinction is important. You might be thinking to yourself, man, these definitions are pretty vague. They can mean pretty much anything. If you are thinking that, you're right. These definitions are vague, but that's by design. Boons and Hammers can be a wide variety of things, so long as those things fit the definitions. For example, a boon can be something very simple, like something that powers up your normal attack with extra damage and gives it a poisoning effect. In fact, these types of simple attack boons are usually going to be your bread and butter for progressing in a run. However, the upgrades that boons offer can also be more abstract. A boon can be an upgrade that makes you invincible for a second after getting hit. Another boon can make your poison effects also slow down enemies. Some boons could even just straight up replenish a lost Death Defiance, which are your lives in Hades. Similarly, hammer upgrades can also be either simple or abstract. For the spear, there's an upgrade that makes your spin attack charge up faster. That's simple. Meanwhile, there's also an upgrade that turns your spear throw into a grenade that explodes on contact. That's more abstract. You get the idea. The main point here is variety. Based on my own counts, Hades has 178 unique boons and 82 unique hammers. These run-exclusive upgrades offer a lot of variety, which is one of the major contributors to how they create so much worthwhile playtime. So, back to the main question, how do Boons and Hammers keep you playing? Although we cited variety just now, that isn't the main reason. To get a better answer to this question, let's take a look at how Hades handles synergy. When I say synergy, I mean how two upgrades work together to give you something greater than the sum of their parts. This also applies to things that aren't run-exclusive upgrades. You can have synergies between weapon aspects, Mirror of Night upgrades, Well of Charon items, and so on. However, Hammers and Boons offer the most synergies out of all of these. I think synergies are best explained through examples, so that's what I'm going to do. Let's start with one boon called Deadly Flourish. This makes your special attack deal more damage, but more importantly, this gives your special attack a 20% chance to be a critical hit, which would triple its damage. By itself, Deadly Flourish isn't very reliable or predictable, since your special attack would only have a 1 in 5 chance to land a crit. Now, let's introduce a weapon aspect. The bow, with the aspect of Chiron. With this, your normal attack tags an enemy, and your special attack homes in on that tagged enemy. Your special attack is a volley of weak arrows, so if you tag an enemy, all of those homing arrows are pretty much guaranteed to hit that enemy. Now, combine this Chiron bow with the Deadly Flourish boon we were just talking about. Since the boon's crit rate applies to each individual arrow, this means that each of the special attack's 4 arrows has a 20% chance to crit. If we do some math, this also means that your chances of getting at least one critical hit per special attack is about 60%. That's much more reliable than a 20% crit chance per attack, which makes it a more predictable and viable upgrade. Already, this is a synergy between the Chiron Bow and Deadly Flourish, since the benefits of both are better together than they would be on their own. But wait, there's more. Let's also apply the hammer upgrade called Relentless Volley, which gives our special attack 4 more shots. This raises the shot count from 4 to 8. Thanks to this, the chance of getting at least one crit per special rises from 60% to 85%. That makes the Deadly Flourish boon even more reliable. Again, all of these upgrades are good on their own, but by synergizing together, they become much more powerful. Although you probably get the idea by now, I'd like to introduce one final boon that really drives home how useful synergies are. Let's choose Hunter's Mark, which is a boon that activates once you crit an enemy, applying the status effect Mark to a nearby enemy. When an enemy is marked, your crit rate for that enemy increases. Let's say that marking an enemy increases the crit rate by 30% in this example. Once a marked enemy is hit with a crit, their marked status goes away. Since Hunter's Mark is an ability that only triggers when you crit, we can say that its chance of triggering once per special attack is the same as the chance of getting at least one crit per special attack. In this case, that'd be 85%. Let's say we land on that 85% and a nearby foe is marked. We'll then start attacking that marked enemy. Remember, marked enemies have a higher chance of getting hit by crits. Our base crit rate is 20% and the bonus rate from the marked effect is 30%. That means each time we use a special attack on an enemy, each arrow has a 50% chance to crit. Doing some more math, this means that the chance of getting at least one crit per special attack on a marked enemy would be about 99%. Oh, and what's this? This also means that the chance of marking another enemy with just one special attack would also be 99%. If we kept alternating our special attack between these enemies, we would have a 99% guarantee that the enemy takes crit damage with each special attack. Needless to say, we can basically fully rely on crits landing with every single attack now. Our original boon, Deadly Flourish, has a simple crit rate of 20%. However, thanks to the synergy between our Chiron Bow, our Relentless Volley Hammer upgrade, and our Hunter's Mark upgrade, we have a 99% chance of each special attack landing at least one crit. This makes our setup much more reliable than a flat 20% crit rate. This has all just been one lengthy example of how one specific synergy works. Hades has 24 unique weapon aspects, 82 unique hammer upgrades, and 178 unique boon upgrades. There are a genuinely insane amount of synergies that you could create between all of these. Most random combinations between these won't have good synergy, but there are still going to be a lot that do. Remember my older point about how there are a large variety of boons and hammers? If we multiply those upgrades against each other, we get an incomprehensibly larger amount of variety. However, variety by itself doesn't mean much, since that alone won't keep you interested. We only care about meaningful variety. If we eliminate all the combinations that don't provide any synergy, we cut down the amount of variety by a lot. However, we still end up with an unfathomably large amount of combinations. To illustrate this, the difference between the number 100 million and the number 1 million is huge, but 1 million is still a really big number by itself. Let me prompt you again with the question we've been trying to answer. How do boons and hammers keep you playing Hades? Is the answer synergies, the thing we just went over? Well, we're getting a lot closer, but we still haven't arrived at the true answer yet. We still need to talk about how boons and hammers appear in your runs. The thing is, you don't get to directly choose what boons and hammers you want. And to be frank, it's all chosen completely randomly. Well, almost completely. It's no secret that most people hate randomness in games. That hatred is completely justified too. Once you discover that the outcome of something in a game is left up to pure luck instead of your own skill and understanding of the game, it stops being fair. And since it's not fair, you'll stop enjoying the game. It's safe to say that randomness in many games is a curse that drags down the fun you're having. However, I argue that this isn't the case for Hades. In fact, I would say it's the complete opposite. Randomness is one of this game's strengths. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. When you find a boon or hammer, it's true that you have zero control over what that upgrade gives you at that very moment. However, there are ways for players to manipulate and influence what upgrades will be chosen randomly. This sounds paradoxical, but it really isn't. When you pick up a boon or hammer, you don't just get one random upgrade. Instead, the game lets you choose between 3 random options. While the options themselves are random, you still get some say in what upgrade you get. This is the most obvious example of players being able to influence randomness, but there are more. Once you just start playing Hades, you'll have no idea what's going on. After a while, though, you'll start to learn how the game works. You'll start recognizing synergies. You'll begin memorizing what upgrades there are. And most importantly, you'll start realizing how you can influence the odds of getting upgrades to be more in your favor. You'll learn that receiving a boon from a god makes it more likely to find more boons from that same god. You'll realize you can use keepsakes to make certain types of boons appear. You'll learn that some types of boons won't appear if you already have a boon of that same type. That last point also applies to hammers, by the way. All of these points bring us to one main idea: strategy. Since you know you can manipulate the odds to be more in your favor, you'll be spending a good amount of brain power each run trying to figure out how you can get the specific upgrades and synergies that you want. However, influencing your odds doesn't mean that you'll always get what you want. In fact, many times you won't get the specific upgrade that you want. Here's the catch though, that's a good thing. I mean, think about it. Imagine if you mapped out your perfect character builds, and then those builds were fulfilled every time you played. You might be amused for a short while, but it wouldn't last. If everything always went according to plan, you'd be bored out of your mind, and you'd drop the game. If you've ever mastered a game to the point of never taking damage and got bored of it shortly afterwards, that's why. It's not interesting when you know exactly how a run is going to play out before you even start it. Meanwhile, in Hades, the upgrades you get aren't always going to be the ones you want, which is going to force you to improvise. In other words, you'll have to adapt your plan in real time. This keeps your runs interesting, since you'll always be pivoting your plans based on what randomness gives you. Hades has a good balance of randomness. It's not too random to the point where you're going to feel frustrated with your luck, but it's not too systematic to the point of being able to know how all the runs are going to play out. After all that explanation, I think we're finally equipped to answer the original question of the video. How do boons and hammers help you keep playing Hades for dozens of hours? Well, for starters, there are a lot of them. As I've said a few times now, Hades has 178 boons and 82 hammers. Boons are sorted by their respective gods, while hammers are attached to specific weapons. Thanks to the fact that you can get multiple boons and hammers in a run, tons of possibilities for synergies are opened up. These synergies are always more than the sum of their parts. In a lot of cases, they can even make or break your runs. Boons and hammers are randomly chosen though, but this randomness isn't completely out of your control. You can manipulate and influence the odds in a number of ways, so you can still shoot for that specific build you want. Thanks to this, a layer of strategy is introduced in every run. However, a lot of things are still random. You won't always get the upgrades you want, which is going to force you to improvise and adapt your plans in real time. This always keeps things interesting. Even if you master the game, randomness is still going to force you into new situations and new modes of thinking. Thanks to that, the layer of strategy gets even deeper. To sum everything up in a concise manner, variety leads to synergy, synergy leads to strategy, randomness also leads to strategy. Ample strategy leads to ample replayability. And that's it, that's the full equation. Although a lot of roguelite games follow this idea, I've never seen a game do it nearly as well as Hades does it. Don't get me wrong, there's still issues with how Hades handles these things. For example, your luck can still get so rotten to the point where it ruins your runs. While many roguelite games do have synergies, many of them feel very shallow compared to the kinds of builds you can make in Hades. Likewise, many of them lean too heavily into randomness. That robs the player of opportunities to actually plan out and strategize their runs. Moreover, I feel that a lot of roguelite games do a bad job at balancing their upgrades. Balancing is actually extremely important when it comes to replayability. If certain upgrades and synergies are objectively worse than others, that makes them useless in the eyes of most players. There's no point in having variety in something if nobody actually cares about it. In other words, that variety isn't meaningful. Meanwhile, Hades has a wide array of viable upgrades and synergies. In fact, this variety comes in so many forms to the point where nobody can agree on what's good and what isn't. Artemis Boons are my personal favorite since I love the high damage they provide. However, one of my friends hates Artemis Boons because he feels they're too luck-based to be reliable. In a similar vein, his favorite boons are from Ares. He loves Blade Rifts because they deal damage so quickly in a wider area. Meanwhile, I don't like Blade Rifts from Ares because I feel they move too slowly and deal too little damage. Again, this just speaks to how many viable upgrades and synergies there are in this game. A lot of people prefer a lot of different things instead of everyone agreeing on one or two synergies being the best. One thing we can all agree on, at least, is that Hades is a fantastic game. With all that squared away, I can finally say, thank you for watching this episode of Hades by Design. On the back end, I redid this episode a few times since I couldn't figure out exactly what I wanted to talk about. Originally, this episode was just going to be a tier list of boons, which is a stupid idea. If there's anything you want to discuss, feel free to write a comment about it. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. It helps support me a lot, and it lets me know that there's an audience for this type of thing. Thank you again for watching, and I hope you have a good day.